Hello everyone, this is Zoltar, and welcome to another Offworld Trading Company multiplayer game. This one is going to be post-commentary, just like the last one was, not live commentary. But I wanted to start us off in the lobby very quickly to show that there are a couple of special settings going on in this game. First of all, we have Masquerade going on, so everybody's identities are going to be hidden from each other in the game. And also we had the Vice President difficulty selected, which means that this initial phase is going to be very, very important, even compared to a normal game, because starts are going to be much slower. Resources are going to be collected far more slowly, and we aren't going to have as much money at the beginning, and black markets are going to be more expensive, and buildings are more expensive to construct in general. So everything is just harder on Vice President for everybody. Even things as simple as stock prices are going to be lower this game than usual, so you're riding a much finer line. You have to be very, very careful on Vice President compared to on a manager difficulty, let's say. All that said, let's get into the game itself. As you can see, I'm Clark this game. I only had 2 claims at the start. I took a high-value aluminum tile and an aluminum iron tile, which I thought was a fantastic tile to take because it had both aluminum and iron next to it. Whichever of those resources I need more of, I can throw down a metal mine, get adjacency bonus for both iron and aluminum on that initial tile, and start collecting whatever resource I think I need at a later point in the game. I am going through with my usual strategy here this game of trying to be very, very fast to upgrade. I chose an expansive colony. I got down very, very early. I want to make sure I'm taking advantage of that. So even though I've got iron producing, I'm actually buying up iron, and I'll be buying up a little bit of glass just to try and propel myself to HQ level 2 and make it very, very difficult for anyone to catch me. This claim would be very nice to have, but I don't press for it too hard. Even though maybe I should have gone a bit higher than I did, I was very concerned because debt is even more influential at this higher level of difficulty. Debt usually has a ×5 multiplier attached to it that it subtracts from your stock price. In Vice President mode, it has a ×7. So I was quite scared of that. I didn't really know exactly how far I could push things and still be okay, so I decided to play it cautiously and not rack up a whole bunch of debt at the start. As we can see, 2 other people thought I chose a fairly decent section of the map to plant down in, and they are right on top of each other, which is just awful for them, but not really my problem at the end of the day. As we can see, I was very successful in getting my HQ upgraded to level 2 very quickly. I'm going to go through my usual strategy of just throwing down steel mills and getting a geothermal up on this map. Very similar to a normal game, just everything's kind of slower, and that makes every decision you make more important. Because when you're tighter on money, when you're tighter on claims, you need to be making sure you're pulling each and every last drop out of each claim. Very difficult game mode, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, if I'm honest. Now, I said that this was Masquerade, but I did learn after the game who some of the players were who weren't me. So let's go through that right now while we're still in these early stages where I'm figuring out exactly how much iron I'm allowed to buy to make steel. First of all, we've got Wells in the game. Now, Wells was our host. He was the chairman of the board, if I remember correctly. I am going to be putting in the description of this video a link to his point of view. Hopefully it will still be up for his Twitch stream. You'll be able to hear commentary from several of the players who were in the game there and just get another perspective on it. Burrows is actually Soren Johnson, as I learned later, which was very interesting to me given some of the decisions he made this game, but we'll go over those as they come up. And then Niven, down there, the blue scavenger player, was PB Head, who is a very strong player who appeared in my previous multiplayer game video, so he's a good player to keep an eye on. As we see, he's the one who went very hard for that early claim, and you can see that it cut into his stock price very significantly, but he decided it was worth it, and he absolutely might have been right about that. I'm just not sure.
The Baltic colony expanded.
Burrows keeping up very well with myself and Bradbury, which is fairly impressive considering we're both expansive and we'll have a bit easier time of it, generally speaking, than he will. although he does not need to worry about glass for his own
The black
expansion.
market is online.
3.
Once again, more claims coming up. I'm still not sure how high I can go here. I get very hopeful at how long it sits on 7,000. I'm like, really? You guys are going to give it to me for 7,000? And people are finally like, no, we can't let that go for 7,000. That would be insane. And it would, in my opinion. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Burroughs gets it for 12,000. That might have even been still on the cheap side. Maybe pushing it up to 14 would have been a good idea. But once again, I was very, very scared of that intense debt. Even with my geothermal coming up, I probably didn't factor that in appropriately. Niven makes the mistake of getting up the first geothermal plant, and it immediately gets mutinied because he did not have a goon squad protecting it. As you can see, I actually have a goon squad on the geothermal that I claimed earlier, and I have another goon squad lined up because I'm expecting people to target that down if they notice that I claimed it early. Especially people who are kind of having trouble getting on their feet. That can be a good way to propel yourself back into a game, is mutinying a goon squad. Wells, I think, even gets the short end of the stick, because it looks like what happened was Niven was targeted by a mutiny. That was likely by Wells. And then Wells immediately got hit by a mutiny on his mutiny, and it just destroyed his whole gameplay. I'm fairly certain Wells actually gets basically entirely knocked out of the game due to all of this happening. I kind of take the same approach. Burroughs, it looks like, is the one who targeted Wells with the mutiny, and I just immediately take half that mutiny away from him in a very similar fashion with the mutiny I gained from my own goon squad. So all that cost me was that goon squad. I destroyed somebody's mutiny, I destroyed half of somebody else's mutiny. I'm getting a huge lead, $470 a second off of these geothermals right now. That really, I think, was just a key series of plays that propels me the rest of the way into this game. I'm also at this point, HQ level 3, I'm very fortunate here that a glass shortage came up. That was fantastic timing for me because I had all the glass I needed already to hit level 3, and that allowed me to move into my own glass production as that shortage hit. So suddenly, I'm making glass once I've got the auto supply set up and I'm done with this food nonsense. Because of the food shortage, I'm making glass for very, very cheap. It's only costing me, I want to say, 40 a second about to run each glass factory, probably a little bit less. And I'm making almost something like 700, 750 a second from my glass markets, from my glass furnaces altogether. So that's an extraordinary amount of money coming in from glass and power at this phase of the game for me. This auction was almost useless. I kind of just used it to look around the map, see, okay, well, water's a little scarce and there's no ice on this map. Water might turn out important later. Not too scarce. But I did have a really great water spot very close by. So I just did my usual thing when a worthless auction comes up. I took the moment to look around the map and see what high value stuff is left that I could get a hold of.
Let this be a lesson to you all. Screw with us. And we screw
Niven getting caught there by Burroughs. Not too surprising to see those two players in particular throwing around a lot of mutinies at each other. I get mutinied there, but that's not that big a deal. It's the second geothermal. I don't need to worry about it all that much. I am now losing a little bit of money on power, but it's not too bad. I've got an upgrade immediately from this glass production, and I can very quickly get my own power established. So once again, not worried about that at all.
Revolted colony expanded.
Man, everybody was just throwing around black markets at each other this game.
The black market is online.
Dynamiting the geothermal plant, not a huge surprise though, because that one was the one that was getting traded around by mutinies a lot. And somebody just eventually decided, nope, we're done with this, and destroyed it. Here, I'm still progressing through my normal strategy. It will look very similar to what I did last game. The primary notable difference is that I never moved out of steel for any period of time, which I did last game. But here, I didn't feel the need to. Steel was very valuable, partially because we have a large number of robotics this game who are going to rely on it very heavily. And so I never felt the need to demolish those in order to get up my farms. Another part of it was that I felt like I was able to upgrade with less interference this time. Remember last game, there were just mutinies everywhere and getting targeted by black market all the time last game. That wasn't happening this game, so I was able to fly through everything a lot faster, get up to HQ level 4, keep collecting those claims, and move into new markets more naturally, not having to tear down my old markets to do it.
The black market
What's happened at this point is it's finally time to start turning towards stock. I've got my research lab up and running. I don't really feel the need to hit HQ level 5 immediately this game. So I'm taking advantage of the high glass prices and I'm trying to get some stock purchases in while other people are still cheap. For example, Burroughs has already proven himself. I don't know who it is at this point, remember. But he's proven himself to be a strong player, so I scare him into buying a little bit of his own stock by just taking one piece of it, and I've got that secured for later in the game if that's necessary. And then I just start targeting down Wells, because Wells is a very important target since he has a level 1 headquarters. Real quick, let's talk about this auction. This is an auction for water engine. Units are powered by water, so that cuts into your fuel consumption. I don't care about that at all. I'm already started my research for teleportation. And Burroughs ends up taking it. That was very surprising to me because Burroughs is robotic. Robotic is not tied into
We caught a dirty rat
the
trying
water
to break
section
our stuff.
of resources at all. And suddenly Burroughs decided to attach himself to it quite solidly and say, I don't want to be using power for my units anymore, is what he says. He says, I want to use water for my units and I want to pay a whole bunch of money to have the right to do that. And I didn't really understand that. I never really do. I don't even like the trade all that much when it's fuel, but when it's power, it blows my mind a little bit. I do manage to acquire Wells, which is a huge play this game because Wells never got off the ground. He's finally managed to start his geothermal plant as I took him over. And so that gave me more power than I could ever really need for a while. And it gave me access to some very quick upgrades from him, which will allow me to continue getting more and more claims throughout the game and allow me to continue progressing without having to hit that HQ level 5 even. I can devote resources more efficiently to additional claims with how cheap Wells is.
With this new expansion, we have increased our potential production rates by a lot.
On top of that, frankly, my stock price is now through the roof because of how much base stock price you acquire when you acquire another person because of their headquarters and things of that nature. Getting back to Burroughs real fast, once again, the reason I don't like that particular patent for robotic at all, ever, is I find that most people will try and become self-sufficient on power because they're very scared of the power market. The power market is a scary thing because you always need power in the moment. You can never really compensate and stockpile power easily unless you've got that particular energy vault. And even there, it's kind of difficult to manipulate and manage. And I find that oftentimes, because of all these things, power usually ends up very cheap.
With this new expansion, we have
and here we can see that power is already half the price of water.
Will love it.
So he's just losing money with that patent at this point, and it's going to keep leaking money at various points throughout this game. It's a decision that I honestly can't agree with, and I just wanted to point it out. I really hate those patents in general. They always just feel like traps to me. Especially for robotic, who's allowed to stay entirely out of the water market if they so choose.
Freelance pirates are auctioning their services to the highest bidder.
Pirates, potentially quite valuable with a scientist on the map. Because we can potentially pirate some food with these. And as we can see, food has gotten absolutely ridiculous. Even my basic level of food production has not been able to keep the price down at all, which is fantastic. That's pretty much exactly where we want to be. We don't want to lower the food price. What we want to do is just make sure we're benefiting off the high price, maybe bring it down a little bit as people are moving into the market. As everybody else moves into that food market, we are allowed to move away from it if that ever becomes necessary, and we've made plenty of money by then.
Expansive colony
So it's not a big
expanded.
deal. As you can see, silicon has gotten very expensive. I set up
I hate those
silicon
filthy
production
bandits.
some time ago, anticipating the price would keep going up from my glass production. And now the glass is simply shut off for the moment, not dismantled, but shut off.
Worker morale is at an all-time
And I will be able to
high,
turn it back
thanks to
on
the
once I've sold off a
infrastructure
large
boost
amount
you
of silicon,
approved.
made money that
We'll
way,
be able to ship more
and I need to
industries
transition
offers
to
in no
producing
time.
glass again. Nanotech and teleportation taken once again. That's exactly the same as last game. I really love those two patents. I think they're fantastic. I think they are the absolute best two patents in the game, with teleportation still standing head and shoulders above nanotech. And I believe I try and pick up, at various points, carbon scrubbing, and one other patent, probably slant drilling. I try and get both of those. Those are still both strong patents, in my opinion. But I don't remember exactly how successful I am with that, so I guess we'll find out later. More and more food going down. Food only keeps going up in price. It's a very interesting thing to me about them knocking out my food production. On the surface, it looks great, because suddenly I'm making less money from food. That's definitely a good thing for them, but it's just going to keep driving that food price higher, because knocking out my food production means that all of you still have to keep buying food. Still have to keep buying food, and still have to keep buying food, and so food is just going to keep going up and up and up in price as more of it's being consumed than produced. It's just all very interesting to me. Here you can see I'm starting to think about Offworlds. I want to be ready to get Offworlds up. I don't really want to have to buy electronics later, after everybody else is starting to put Offworlds up and they're driving that electronics price up. And with a whole bunch of robotics in the game, they're going to keep consuming them and driving that price up. So I think, okay, I'll move into electronics now so I'm ready, and then it all gets ruined by this chemical shortage. Where I'm like, oh, sell all the things, time to get into that chemical shortage. And the chemical shortage is a fantastic shortage to take advantage of, which we're going to talk about after we talk about this patent auction.
Up for auction. Bidding will begin at 6.
Here's an interesting thing that happens.
7.
Burroughs is going to end up with this patent again. So suddenly, he's moved from being entirely dependent on power to being entirely dependent on water.
16.
And I really hate that decision, because I find power, no resource is entirely unlimited in this game, right? There's always going to be a limited amount of access to a resource, but power is by far the least limited. Every single tile in the game can give you power, and many of them are very good at it. That is not the case with water. Limited numbers of tiles can give you water. And it means that at some point you could just get entirely shut out of water by people focusing on those specific water tiles. If people are focusing on your power tiles and they're trying to drive up that power price to get your debt down, you do always have the option of doing something like, say, scrapping your steel mills or some of your glass production or something. If power gets that expensive, you can do that and you can move slightly into that market and be okay. Unless you happened to claim on top of water, you can't do that with water as easily. It's much harder to move into that water market if things start going wrong, or to augment that water market later if that's absolutely necessary than it is power. So I really, really don't like the decision to be dependent on water instead of
Scientific
power.
colony expanded.
At this point, Burroughs and I are just grabbing up everybody in the game who has started entering death spirals so that we can take advantage of that, so we can get those extra claims. He's in a great position right now. He still has the ability to put up Offworlds, and he has the ability to get extra claims. He's in a great spot right now. I'm in a good spot too, though. And I take advantage of my purchases to go and hide my my Offworld trading company. I just go and put it in that corner where people will have a little bit harder time finding it, which does, I believe, pan out. When people start trying to target me, they end up a little bit slow, they can't quite get there in time. And I place a goon squad on top of it that I bought far earlier. Chemicals are still way up from the shortage. I decided it's time to move into that market now that food is finally crashing out. Which should be no surprise whatsoever. There's a lot less food consumption in this game than usual because of the robotic factions.
We're not
Dynamite on
surprised,
Niven
just
doesn't work.
disappointed
Not
in
a
you.
surprise at all. But it's always worth the effort. Always worth the try. Because even if he comes around and just dynamites us right back, we have goon squads up on the most important territories, and we might be able to just keep trading that dynamite back and forth for quite some time, costing each other a large amount of money. I do get a little concerned here. I'm a little surprised at how well Niven is able to target my stock because of how high the price is.
Up for auction. Bidding will
But
begin
thinking
at
about it further, there's really no other stock for him to go after because I'm the only one with open stock remaining.
auction unclaimed,
Everybody else, he has to
bidding
buy out
closed.
large portions. If he tries to purchase Asimov, he's just dumping money at myself and Burroughs. He can't really buy out himself because it's the same concept. He's nowhere close to being able to buy out Burroughs because he has to pay, once again, both of us a huge amount for that. Because Burroughs has all of his stock already contained. So it really shouldn't have been that surprising to me. And I likely should have started acquiring my own stock earlier. Another chemical shortage. Great news for us.
We caught a dirty rat trying to break our stuff.
And we caught Niven trying to do the dynamite trade. Note how long that took him, though. It took him a long time
Your
to get to
stock
our
is being bought.
We're not surprised,
Offworld.
just disappointed in you.
So that shouldn't have been any surprise whatsoever. I am having some trouble at this point keeping track of everything. You can tell, like, I'm starting to let buildings stop functioning because I'll run out of resources and things of that nature. But it's all kind of in an effort to get all these off-world markets established that I think I have the time for.
Offworld
And then I can
shipment
start
launched.
seriously playing
Look at all
defensively.
the money.
You will see I choose not to buy out Asimov immediately. I'm not really worried about him. I'm more worried about defending myself because I feel like I'm in a very solid position. You can see my stock price is actually very, very high compared to everybody else's. Burroughs feels like is starting to get very hard by that high water price. And I'm not dumping all that much water into the system. And Niven's probably not dumping all that much water in the system. So he's starting to get in trouble, and he might have to have changed directions to make sure he's got all that water secured. So this is the phase of the game where I'm just buying up my own stock. I'm just securing that solid lead I think I have. And then I'll start focusing now that I've made all my investments. I've defended myself as best as I can. I'll probably start focusing down Niven because he's the one with my stock.
Reporting to colony terminated.
That underground nuke should come as no surprise. It ends up hitting Niven, which probably wasn't the best idea, except that he was the one I was more concerned about actually buying in the short term.
We're not surprised, just disappointed.
And then, of course, we
in you.
power surge Burroughs and his 3 water pumps because he's the one most dependent on it. We're just trying to make everybody's water super expensive. This can even help cut into their
Freelance
off-world investment
pirates are auctioning their
because
services to
driving
the
water
highest
up means there'll
bidder.
be less food. Less
Scientific
food means it'll be
colony
harder to send
expanded.
food off-world. Food is the most valuable off-world. And as long as we're kind of controlling
Auction
that,
unclaimed,
and we can
bidding
keep track of
closed.
it, we'll still be in a good position. And they'll have hopefully a bit harder time adjusting to that market change. As you can see, my steel mills most certainly should be active right now and are not because iron has tanked, everybody's building up off-worlds, everybody's using steel except for Niven. That dynamite hit was huge, by the way. It just got to the point where goon squads were incredibly expensive. You can't protect everything. Very important to keep up on all that dynamite early because it helps you later. You're not going to get the hits right away. People will target you right back. But later on, as long as you're keeping up with it, especially if you have the lead in number of off-worlds, they're going to have a very hard time catching up to you without some serious focused black market attacks.
Off-world shipment
Do I upgrade
launched.
wells? Yeah, I do upgrade wells. Apparently I wanted the claims. I'm not sure what I wanted the claims for. It was probably carbon
The shareholders
that I was
will
looking
love
at. I
it.
really maybe wanted to get a hold of some carbon. I am getting all my steel production back online, but there are all kinds of extremely valuable resources on the map right now. It's not all about the off-worlds. And so that was probably my thought process rather than getting another off-world up with this food price going so high, was I wanted to get resources off the map in particular because there was plenty of money to be made after there. Apparently I did get slant drilling at some point because I just put down those 3 quarries. Shouldn't be too terrible surprise. I did say I wanted to do it. I just didn't remember if I had or not. Burroughs, as you can see, his stock price went ridiculously low, so I do take the opportunity to finish him off. I believe that was simply because water got far too expensive, and he didn't have any of it because of the power surge we put onto his water tiles. his debt got out of control, and he went into a death spiral very late in the game, and that was all just based on that weak point he let himself have from relying entirely on water. Our offworlds are getting blown up, but we have so many of them, I'm not sure that was important.
Look at all the money.
And that was just kind of the theory we were going with, was look how much stuff we have, look how high our stock price is. I guess it really doesn't matter what happens the rest of this game, because there's almost no way for Niven to catch us. That was very specifically selected, obviously, because we knew that that one didn't have a goon squad attached, but the other one might. So it was just a better decision to blow up the one that we were fairly certain would be safe. Here, I'm just waiting for the money. It's literally just constant control shift down
Look at all the money.
until the victory.
Look at all the money.
Should not be a big surprise how that turned out, given the start. I was able to do my very standard strategy again. There was what I still think, and I don't think I'll ever be convinced otherwise, was a very big mistake, transitioning to a complete reliance on water instead of a complete reliance on power. And then it felt very much like everybody else was accumulating large amounts of debt throughout that game, and that was kind of putting them into some weak spots at times, where you could acquire just a little bit of their debt here, a little bit there, and then finally that one massive crash for Burrows is what really won the game for us. When your stock price is like $7 at the end of the game, you know something's gone terribly wrong. But still, it was a good match. It was a fun little match. I really enjoyed seeing what everybody else was doing and how they were trying to make everything work, because maybe I think of it as a mistake, but it's also an interesting experiment to see how you can try and make all these other factions work. There is one more game left from that evening. It's a bit of a surprise game. I really enjoyed it. It was a team game, first of all, and I don't go expansive that time, so it will be a significantly different thing in its own way from what happened in the last two games. For now, that'll do it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.